The solar wing.
2 and 2. I'd like to concur with CCME for issue of Perch 3 on engine 1.
The solar wing that you were referring to is important for future shuttle flights and also for the planned U.S. space station to provide power in space for those vehicles. This has to be, as you mentioned, a major disappointment for NASA with the problems that they had when they lost the Palapa and the Westar satellites. That is, the satellites went into errant orbits. It wasn't NASA's fault, but it was a blotch on the agency's record, and they wanted to set things straight with this launch, especially carrying another satellite.
One of the satellite owners refused to put its satellite on board this spacecraft, concerned about losing it on this mission. So instead of 2 satellites, there was 1 on board.
Also, when you consider that this problem has cropped up a day after a major computer failure, which caused delay, the third technical failure that has created a delay in the 12 shuttle missions. And again, we are not yet sure precisely what has happened here, if there is a computer problem or something wrong with one of the systems, but it has not been a good 2 days for NASA.
And let us talk about the condition of the astronauts on board. Norm, when you were on that 7th flight, when you heard the countdown reaching 10 and down to 3 and 2, the adrenaline was really pumping, wasn't it? It'll take a while for this crew to get over this second disappointment, won't it?
It will take a long time, and I was sitting there during that countdown sequence thinking, boy, we're really going to get to do it, and I know that's what they wanted to experience today. So to come that close and then stop has to be a disappointment, but I don't think that they're going to be so disappointed as to not want to try it again as soon as possible.
When I said you had been on the 4th flight, I confused you with Henry Hank Hartsfield, the commander of this mission, who is the only experienced spaceman on this flight. He was on STS-4. The other members of the crew, Judy Resnick, who will become and was to become the 2nd American woman to fly in space, Steve Hawley, who is scheduled to become the first husband of a U.S. space woman to fly in space. His wife, Sally Ride, preceded him in space. Richard Mullane is the other astronaut, and then there was a paying customer, Charles Walker, who was trained to do a pharmaceutical experiment on board. This was to have been a flight used to prove out that pure drugs can be manufactured in space. And the drug in question is a mystery drug, Peter. I don't think it's ever been released. The name of the drug has never been mentioned.
That's right. It is it's a closely guarded secret because this is a commercial venture rather than a government venture. And in the highly competitive pharmaceutical business, you don't want to tip your hand to your competitors. And so it is generally believed until this hormone that they're going to produce is available for clinical testing, it won't be until that time that the public will learn precisely what it's used for. Norm, I had a question about what the crew might be doing right now. Do they have instruments on board that might help them find out what happened, or will that be done all at launch control and mission control?
We have quite a bit of instrumentation on board, but we do not by any means have the amount of information that flows into those consoles over in launch control and then later to mission control. I would suspect that the reason will be found out by the controllers rather than the crew, although I'm sure that the crew is also looking at all those indications inside.
And NASA has now confirmed what we were talking about before, that there has never been such a main engine cutoff before. And I think what we're looking at there is the blockhouse at the Kennedy Space Center, Norm, the launch control, and now we're back to the launch pad. Let's listen in. A long and rigorous process now of cooling the ship down and making it safe before the crew leaves to begin to plan for another day. And we, as yet, just don't know when that other day will be. Doubtful that they could get off tomorrow, but I can't say that with any degree of certainty.
GPC now. Okay, and have not already performed the open the visors at this time.
Water being sprayed on the main engines to cool them.
Okay, all systems, this is the OTC on 212. Perform your securing
Yesterday it was a computer problem that forced the cancellation of the flight. Today the weather was bad, then the weather cleared, and the countdown reached, well, I don't know whether it was 3 or 2, and the main engines were lighted. The ship was ready to go, and suddenly there was main engine cutoff, and that's something that I believe is done by computer, isn't it, Norm?
Yes, this shutdown was apparently done by the onboard computers. They take over control of the launch sequence right around 10 seconds, I believe, and from then on it's strictly up to them as to whether we launch or hold.
Control. At the present time, we did have indication that 2 of our fire detectors on the 0 level of the mobile launcher platform were on. They are side by side, directed approximately right at the engine area, and upon notification of that, the main engine engineer requested that we turn on the heat shield fire water, which is what was could be seen spraying up in the vicinity of the engine bells of Discovery's 3 main engines. The launch team is continuing their reconfiguration of the vehicle. The orbiter access arm has been put back in place up against the hatch so that the crew can get out as soon as the reconfiguration is completed.
That little round window there is the hatch that leads from the gantry to the spacecraft. Again, the indication is that one of the 3 main engines did not light up.
A precautionary measure.
And they did not want to fly with 2 engines.
We don't have any confirmation that there was a fire or anything in the region of the aft end, but we did have a couple of fire detectors that were on. So as a precautionary measure, we went ahead and turned on the heat shield water, which again is being sprayed up into the engine bells of the 3 shuttle main engines.
Again, they had a fire. Their fire detectors indicated a warning, but they have no evidence that there has actually been any fire.
Sensors are located somewhere in the vicinity of about the number 3 engine, which is the one on the right side, looking at the engine.
Peter and Norm Thagard, I want to thank you. We'll probably get back to you.
It happened within milliseconds, and it came at the end of an otherwise trouble-free countdown.
10. We have a go for main engine start. 7, 6, 5. We have main engine start. We have a cutoff. We have an abort by the onboard computers of the orbiter Discovery.
The stunning shutdown set off an equally dramatic chain of events as ground controllers and crew members proceeded coolly to throw the switches to shut off the systems to safeguard Discovery. Fire broke out at the base of the rocket ship. 3 separate water dousings were required to put it out. Although the crew was out of danger within seconds, ground personnel wasted no time getting Discovery's hatch opened. It took only 38 minutes, record time, before the first of the 6 astronauts, Judy Resnick, emerged. The others followed shortly. The shutdown was caused by a problem in one of the 3 main engines. When its main fuel valve didn't open on command, requiring a backup system to get it going, Discovery's computerized launch system automatically shut all the engines down. The shuttle is not permitted to fly with only the backup command system. NASA still doesn't know whether a computer program or the 4-inch valve or something else kept 4.5 million pounds of shuttle and fuel and rocket on the pad today. As for the crew, some of whom went home to Houston today, this second disappointment in as many days was tempered by a sense of relief. As one NASA official put it, the fail-safe system worked the way it was supposed to.
Riding a rocket ship is not something that is like riding down the freeway itself. I think that the crew was not in any danger that hadn't been planned. I think that the actions taken were there to prevent it from getting into an uncontrolled situation.
NASA won't set a new launch date until they understand fully what happened today. And at the moment, the failed liftoff means Discovery's maiden voyage is at least 2 weeks away. Lynn Scher, ABC News at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida.